And it's not just the noise. It'll rattle your house. I mean, it's just, oh. So we were like, no, we can't get a house. I was like, oh, this house is not very expensive. And then I was like, wait a minute. I think I know why this house is 10 grand less than every other house we looked at. Something tells me. Yeah, and I asked them about the train, and they kind of minimized, oh, you'll get used to it. And I was like, I don't know if I'd get used to that, because it was right up behind.
Yeah, those engineers, they try to get a sound of their own. So you may get 2 blasts, you may get 20, you don't know.
Well, there's a crossing right there by those houses, and I assume they hit their horn when they come through there, but, oh, man. Well, yeah, so I got educated at the state fair. It's good. I learned some things, yeah. Yeah, I learned a few things. It's good.
Have you ever been down there with animals?
Oh, no, we've gone through there before. It's the first time I took the tour, the UMU tour. I didn't know it, University of Mu. This is the first time we'd taken the tour, and I was like, hey, let's go do that. No, we always go to the dog show, and then this year they had the birthing center, and so that was cool. Like I said, we spent an hour in there because a calf was being born while we were there. Someone said, oh, that cow's having a baby. I went, that cow has a baby. We are really going to make some money off this deal, because that would definitely be news if that cow has a baby. We are gonna, yeah, that will make the news. But instead, I was disappointed that cow had a calf, not a baby. If the cow had a baby, we would have definitely, I've been like, yeah, man, the fair is gonna make some money off of this one.
Whereabouts is this birthing thing? Is it near the Midway or what?
No, on the south end of the stadium, just to the east of the stadium, there's a place right there that they used to do the dog show in that arena. Right behind, just south of that arena, in that same building though. Yeah, in the same building. They have the horses back there for the police department in that same building. In the past, they've had petting things in there. But this time they've done the birthing thing, which I think is cool. They have kids in there watching chickens hatch and stuff like that. They have a hatchery, and then they have there's another, I wasn't familiar with this term, but they have another one where after they hatch, they move them in there. It's, no, it was called like a broomer or something. I'd never seen the term before. But anyway, they had a hatchery that was glassed in and, warm. And I didn't know it takes hours for these chickens to hatch. They'll break the egg, and then you're like, oh, they're going to come out. And it's like, and you read on the thing, about 8 hours. And you go, 8 hours? I ain't staying here for this. I'll go over to the other one where they already have them running around, So, yeah, but we had a blast. It was fun. Had all these baby pigs, and that was kind of cool. Like I said in the sermon, they had this, the species name for the pig is the porcine, which I assume is where you get the word pork from, right? Porcine. But I glanced across it, and my brain filled in the letters. I thought it said porcupine, and I was going, why are they birthing porcupines at the state fair? That sounded dangerous to me. And then I went over to take a look at these porcupines. I was like, those don't look like porcupines at all. What's wrong with these people? And I looked back up at the sign. I was like, oh, that's the species name. Okay, all right, that doesn't say porcupine. I was scared for the children if they were birthing porcupines in there. That sounded dangerous to me. So, but anyway, so we learned a lot. It was fun. But then yesterday, it was a bucket list thing for me. I had been before, but not Michael. And Michael and I have done a lot of sporting events together. Okay, we went to the College World Series one year and stuff like that. Michael had never been to a Texas OU game. So I came across a couple of tickets, cheap, upper deck, end zone, but, well, the face value on them is not that cheap anyway. Yeah, I mean, they sell them for quite a bit of money, even if you're a season ticket holder. But anyway, so Michael had never been to the Texas OU game. I think it is the weirdest, kind of coolest sporting event ever, because they divide the crowd down the 50-yard line. You know this? They divide them down the 50-yard line, and the Texas fans sit facing Austin, and the Oklahoma fans sit facing Norman. And so you have a sea of crimson or red on one end, and you have a sea of orange on the other end. It's a very weird sporting event. And so
It's been that way forever.
I know, and that's the other reason it's really cool, is because it's been that way forever. And then the other cool part about it is at the fair. And so how many times you go to a football game where, you know that slingshot thing where they shoot you in the rubber band thing? You see the car occasionally up over the top of the stadium, or the Ferris wheel moving. I told Michael, I said, you could do this, or you could just use tickets and buy Ferris wheel trip the whole day and watch the game from the Ferris wheel. You know, you could do it that way. And so we showed up. The state fair is so poorly run. I mean, I hate to say that about it, but it is so poorly run. They just don't handle. They ran out of water and Gatorade in the first quarter. I'm like, you guys knew it was going to be 92 degrees, and you didn't go, hey, maybe we should get some extra water and Gatorade. They're out of water and Gatorade in the entire stadium by the end of the first quarter. And you just go, okay, someone's not thinking here at all. There's zero planning. But anyway, we had fun. It was great. Just me and Michael. We didn't ride anything, of course, or any of that kind of stuff, but except the Dodge truck. They're jumping hills in these Dodge trucks. You can get in, seatbelt yourself in. 4 jumps. You don't get to drive. That would have been fun. Turn Michael loose in there. That would have been fun. But anyway, 4 jumps in the Dodge truck. So that was pretty cool. It was free too. The best ride in the park. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so Michael and I went yesterday to go see Texas OU, and yeah, it was fun. Yeah, bucket list thing. I won't do it again.
Unless you were an OU fan.
True. I'm a quasi-Texas fan. If Texas had lost yesterday, I would have slept just fine last night. It was more about the experience of it. And if OU had won, I'd been like, cool, that's cool. But Texas really decimated them yesterday. It was ugly. But the last time I had gone was 30 years ago. And I went with some friends of mine from Austin, and we went to the game. And so... so that was the last time I'd been to a Texas OU game. And so Michael had never been. And as much as Michael and I have done these various sporting events, World Series games, we've been to multiple baseball stadiums, to Wrigley, White Sox, Colorado, Houston, things like that. I was like, this is on the sports bucket list for us to go just to experience it. And so, yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Oh, because they were guests this year, so they had that sideline. The next year they'll be home, and they'll be on the other sideline. So that they switch every year home and away. Not that it makes any difference. It's a neutral site. But the one thing that does make a difference is if you're in the sun or not. So they switch sides for the teams. Yeah. Well, the Texas fans cuss like sailors, so that was no fun. Yeah. The other thing we did, we took the DART train down there. I didn't want to park down there, so we took the DART train. We parked in downtown Dallas at the office building right across the street from the office building I used to work in. And we took the train and then to Fair Park and then came back and then walked back, got the car. And then that way we weren't in the traffic of the fair. And so that was kind of different. We took the DART train. So, yeah, public transportation. Yeah.
We used to ride over on the bus and get off and get on the trolley and go to Fair Park.
Yeah, the trolley I think it's still running. So, anyway, have anybody been to the fair yet this year? Any of you?
I had been to the fair probably 10 years.
Oh, really? You're going tomorrow? All right. Very good. Very good.
Thanks for the advice about the birthday thing. I think they started that 2 years ago.
Did they? Okay. Yeah, I think that's a pretty cool experience. And so, yeah. The fair is the same every year, and you know it's a ripoff in terms of pricing for food. You know it going into it. It's part of it. You just know.
You didn't have all the junk food. You didn't have anything.
Yeah, I mean, the food is terrible for you, too. I mean, they have deep-fried Twinkies, deep-fried double-stuffed Oreos, deep-fried, there's nothing there that you can eat that's remotely healthy, but you know it going into it.
Fried ice cream?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they have the deep fried cheesecake too, which is actually really good. We had that last year. It was like, wow, that was spectacular.
They have a contest in it.
They do, yeah. We actually ate the runner-up dessert this time, and it was pretty good. It was pretty good. Yeah, it was not bad. So anyway, you just know going into it, it's a rip-off. You have to buy the coupons. You know, you have to use these coupons. They don't handle money, so you have to use the coupons. And I found out why they do this is that 10% of the coupons never get spent. So if they sell 10 million tickets, that means they made $1 million profit just by virtue of this. Because you can use them the next year. I think, though, a lot of times they just never come back. And yeah, and I think too, because I was thinking through the administration, at the end of the day, you have to count your tickets out as a vendor, right? I assume that's what they do to get their money. And that's an administrative nightmare. I kept thinking, why not just use an app? You know, you download the Fare app, you use the app at that vendor, and you get your food. And the answer is because the 10% ticket loss. There's a 10% profit built into it. So it's why companies sell gift cards too, by the way, just so you know. They sell gift cards. You go, what's the justification? These gift cards, seems like the administration of it, 5+% of gift cards never get used. So that pays for the administration and then some for using the gift cards. So Walmart's cool selling you a gift card because they know 5% of them will get lost and never used. So, yeah. Anyway. All right, well, it's good to see you guys this morning. We're talking about more important things than gift cards and fares. Talking about eternal matters here, Revelation chapter 22. We're on the last chapter of the Bible, and I want to read this text, verses 12 down through, we'll read through 16, and then talk through these verses together. And so, verse 12, behold, I am coming quickly, and my reward is with me, to render to every man according to what he has done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those who wash their robes, that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter by the gates into the city. Outside of the dogs and the sorcerers and the immoral persons and the murderers and idolaters and everyone who loves and practices lying. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you these things for the churches. I am the root, the descendant of David, the bright morning star. All right, so that's our text today. Most of this we've already covered. I want to focus in on the last part of this that I've entitled, Right to the Tree of Life through the Descendant and Root of David. Right to the Tree of Life through the root and descendant of David. So access to the Tree of Life, access to the holy city, access to this heavenly realm is through this statement by Jesus that he is the root or the descendant of David. And so we're going to look at a little bit of that. The first thing, though, to talk through here is blessed are those who wash their robes. We looked at that last week, so that they have the right to the tree of life and may enter the city by the gate. So there's access here. This is an issue of access. And the access that we're looking for in this case, access to the tree of life, access to the city, to the sacred, eternal city, Jerusalem. And as we've seen in terms of measurements and things like that, this city is massive. It's nothing like the city of Jerusalem today. This city covers hundreds of square miles. This is massive. If the biblical account of this redeemed city that descends from heaven is the city that we're describing here, I think it is that it's a massive city, and the nations will stream to it, so it's got to be a big city anyway. The nations will stream to it, and it's not like even just the nations today, it's the nations throughout history. So believers throughout history will stream to it from every nation, language, tribe, and they'll stream to this to the city and also to the tree of life, which will be the healing for the nations. Whereas before, because of the curse of sin and the work of the devil, the nations were at enmity with each other, at war with one another. Now, because of Christ, peace has come to the nations, and we want to come to the city of Jerusalem, not to war against it, as we've seen throughout the book of Revelation and really throughout history. I think this is one thing about the city of Jerusalem, is that throughout world history, it has been the focal point of a lot of warfare. So are some other places on the planet for that matter, but I'm just saying, it has been the focal point of a lot of warfare. And this idea of peace and healing of the nations, and the nations coming here, that the nations are seeing. We looked at the verse in Isaiah where they're going to take their swords and make them pruning forks or plowshares, or those kinds of things. And so no more war, no more violence, no more nations at war with one another. And so this is this hopeful idea. And the people who have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb, as we saw last week, that they have the right, so that they have the right to the tree of life and to come into the city gates, to come into the city. And we looked at Revelation 2:7 last time. I think we looked at this verse. I can't remember. This is the end of the Ephesian church letter. Remember, there's a letter to 7 different churches. Ephesians is the first church in Revelation chapter 2. And he says, "He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God." And so in Revelation 2:7, the very first church he addresses, he gives them this promise. And then in Revelation chapter 22, we get the fulfillment of that promise. We get the paradise city and the tree of life. And so it's interesting, the first church in Revelation 2 and the last church, Revelation 22, the whole church, gathered together. The same kind of hopeful promise is that we have the tree of life and the paradise, the gathering in the city of the sacred people of God. All right. And then in Revelation 22, at the top of Revelation 22, at the beginning of it, he says, "Then he showed me a river of the water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of God and the Lamb. In the middle of the street, on either side of the river was the tree of life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. The leaves for the tree were for the healing of the nations." And so that's the backdrop of this, is that this tree of life and access to it is for the healing of the nations. The access to it is for good, to take all the evil that we've seen in the book of Revelation and all of human history and heal all of that forever and ever. All right, question, yes?
In Revelation 2 that you just showed, where it talked about the tree of life being in the paradise of God, I was just thinking, when Jesus was on the cross,
Yeah.
he told the thief that next to him that today I'll see you in paradise. So does that mean that before the New Jerusalem descended out of heaven, that Jesus and the thief met in the New Jerusalem while it was still in heaven?
That's a great question. And in fact, this is the whole question about what is this city descending out of heaven. And the book of Hebrews, even talking about the sacrificial system of the temple, was really just a model of what was taking place in heaven, right? I mean, that the real Holy of Holies is actually in the heavenly realm. Is that what's intended here? Is like the heaven descending. The way Jesus descended, that's the language used by Paul, right? And he's the tabernacle, he tabernacled among us, right? So we have Jesus walking around, but he's God incarnate, so he's tabernacling among us. But then he ascends back to his Father, and now he's back in the heavenly tabernacle, right? So I don't know, that does seem like, and the word paradise, it could be a broad term to just say a really cool place to be. So that's the problem with this word, the word paradise. "This day you will be with me in paradise." It could be a broad term to just say, there's this really cool place, that's where we're going. And this is a really cool place too, to the Ephesian church, in paradise. This really cool place. We're going to go to this really cool place. Without the details, we're going to go somewhere really cool. And then we get some details that, does that mean it's the same place because of the same term is used? Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And we definitely, the access to this tree, the hope of Ephesians, the Ephesian church in Revelation 2:7 clearly does point to this moment, I think. I think that's a absolute worth a connection. So I don't know, that's a good question. I mean, is it that literal, like this is what he has in mind? Or is he speaking more broadly, philosophically, theologically, and less specific? I don't know, yeah. Same word, though, used with the thief on the cross. Yeah, other comments or questions? That's good, thank you. All right, so In fact, right after this text, it says in Revelation 22, it says, I testify to everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this book. If anyone adds to them, God will add to him the plagues which are written in this book. If anyone takes away the words of the book of this prophecy, God will take away his part from the tree of life and the holy city. So again, this tree of life and the holy city really is the driving motive here. I want to be there. I want to be where Jesus is. I want to be where the tree of life is. It's brought healing. I want to be in the holy city where the gathering of the saints, those kinds of things. And so this desire to go and be in this place. I think this is interesting. I think it's fair to say our desire is to be where Jesus is. But the book of Revelation does provide for the fact that where Jesus is also a desirable place for us to be. Like, we want to be where Jesus is, but with all the ramifications of that, because the writer here says that's part of our motive is we want to make sure to be with Jesus and in the holy city and where the tree of life is and the living water is. Like, this is not just a statement of, we'll hang out with Jesus, but we'll hang out in Jesus in this beautiful place he's actually made for us. And I think this parallels a bit of the Adam and Eve story. Because Adam and Eve did not just enjoy God, they enjoyed the garden he made for them, right? I mean, it wasn't just the enjoying of God himself, but the implication of enjoying God, enjoying the creation he made for them. And to me, the New Jerusalem is the replication of the Garden of Eden. We have the tree of life, all those kinds of things. Only now it's a massive city and the nations are coming there. But the same idea is the gathering of all these individuals in the presence of God, but also in the place that he's made for us. And so there's a place we're going to. There's a person we're going to, that we will see Jesus, but there's a place we're going to, the place he's made for us. Remember what Jesus said to the disciples? I think this is implied in this. Behold, I go and prepare a place for you. So it is that he goes, and I will come again that where I am, you may be also. So it's the presence of Jesus and the place he's made for us. I think both of those are in mind. And this makes sense because if we're going to be with Jesus, we don't want to hang out with him in Grand Prairie. I mean, if it's forever. Because Grand Prairie's nice, but it's just not going to last forever, right? It's a cool place, great place. I love the city of Grand Prairie. You go, yeah, but Grand Prairie is going to deteriorate with time, just like we are. And so I don't want to hang out with Jesus if you say, or I don't want the hangout to Jesus would be, it's in a place that's going to deteriorate, in a body that's going to deteriorate, because eventually this will run out, right? So it's like, you need a new body, and we need a new place. Because if we're going to be with Jesus forever, that needs some upgrades, right? If Jesus is involved in this, we got to have upgrades. New bodies, new place. Because the old bodies and old place are just not going to cut it, right? And so I think this idea here of it's the person of Jesus, but also the place he's made for us. And so you see here that the thing is so that they have the right to the tree of life and to the city. And so it's not just Jesus, but the place he's made for us that is involved in the heavenly experience. I had someone one time tell me, they said, I don't care what heaven is as long as I have Jesus. I go, well, I care, because if I have a broken down body, that's going to be a short experience. And I care because if it's, Mansfield, Texas, it's going to have a short experience. What's that?
You're not going to have a broken down body.
Right. That's why the upgraded body, and that's why if the person says, I don't care what else, I just want Jesus. I go, I want Jesus plus the body he's offered us, plus the place he's offered. Because anything short of that will not be the full experience of Jesus. Because we in our bodies like this, right now, you and I, to experience the full presence of Jesus right now, would practically overwhelm us and destroy us. Look at John when he responds to this, right? It's just like overwhelmed by it. We got to have an upgrade here. These bodies aren't built for that. And Adam and Eve's bodies were until this fall. Because remember, he's walking with them in the cool in the garden. They don't think anything of it. No problem. It's like, this is awesome. Hey, God came by. No problem. After the fall, they're like, I think God's coming. Let's hide. I don't want that body. That's the body I got right now. And my immediate response to the presence of God is, hey, do we have anywhere to hide right now? I mean, because that's Adam and Eve's response, right? But now I realize now we're in Christ, so that changes that dynamic quite a bit. But I'm just suggesting that these broken down bodies after the fall are not really built for this experience. So we need resurrected body. And Adam and Eve kicked out of the garden, and the flaming sword keeps them from returning. They never get back to the pristine environment where they could hang out with God without interruption. And so this is the rebuilding of the Garden of Eden experience.
So did Adam and Eve get to heaven or never did?
Ooh, that is a great question. What happens with Adam and Eve? All right, so this is not my idea, okay? I'm going to share with you from Dr. Udliar from Southwestern Seminary, professor of Hebrew, who was scary. He was mean and scary. I was older than him too, which kind of ticked me off, but he intimidated me. He knew Hebrew, Aramaic, Ugaritic, Greek, Latin, French, German, Hindi, English, and I think a couple of others. And he knew it better than anyone I'd ever been around. When I say he knew it, someone asked him a question about a verb in Jonah chapter 3, and he said, that verb with that form occurs 9 times in the Old Testament, and then rattled off the 9 occurrences. Psalm 19:2, Hezekiah, I don't know. Anyway, Zechariah 2. Anyway, so he just rattled them off. I thought, okay, he got his PhD in that word. That's the only way you're going to know this. 2 weeks later, someone asked him about some noun. He goes, that form of that noun occurs 13 times in the Old Testament, and rattled them off, every reference. I was like, okay, his PhD is from MIT in linguistics, so maybe the smartest person I've ever been around. And I've been around math people who are scary smart. So his mind, just unbelievable. So I was like, so when he said, here's what I think the theology, I was like, I'm listening. The theology of the Old Testament was that if someone died, or the theology of the Bible is that in the Old Testament, if someone died and they were not believers, they go to Hades, but to the side of Hades that is unpleasant. If they were on the side of believers or faithful in the Lord, they died and they went to Hades, this holding tank, but they were on the nicer side of town, right? And when Jesus rose again from the dead, he sprung them out of this temporary holding place, and they went to another holding place that is now more robust. That the souls that were imprisoned prior to the resurrection of Jesus have now been released into the heavenly realm. They needed the death and resurrection of Jesus to free them completely. And those who were in this holding tank, temporary holding tank, that was on the bad side of things are released even more into a terrible place. And that now when a person dies, Paul says, absent from the body, what? Present with the Lord, right? So when a person dies now, their soul immediately goes to the presence of the Lord. And this has been freed up because Jesus' resurrection. And so Dr. Udliar lay all this out, okay? So for Adam and Eve, now we have this question, all right? Adam and Eve die, do they go to, let's say this. Are Adam and Eve's destiny eternally with God? What do you think? Yes or no? I'm thinking yes. I'm thinking yes.
They ask forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, Adam had 900 years to work through this. So I'm hoping somewhere in there he went, I should probably ask God to forgive me. 900 years in there, so maybe he got some clarity. I mean, I don't know.
He had a wife. She probably nagged him and couldn't get
Well, she was probably first. I agree with you that. She was wiser than him. But yeah, and then, yeah. Uh-huh.
The thing about the idea where in the Old Testament, everyone went to Hades just on different sides, whether you were good or evil. What about the parable in the New Testament of the rich man and Lazarus? Abraham wasn't in Hades.
Yeah, so this is Dr. Udliard's argument, is that Abraham is the presence of the good side of Hades, or the good side of the holding tank. He's on the good side of things. And they call it Abraham's bosom, right. This is the holding place of the faithful waiting the resurrection of Christ. Yeah. the bosom of Abraham, the gathering of Abraham being the most faithful of all of them, and that's where they're waiting, is with Abraham. And so Lazarus is resting in Abraham. And this actually fits the theology of the day, which was that their rest is in being connected to Abraham, the faith of Abraham, hopefully, but yes. So, yeah, so the idea, remember when, this is where Dr. Uliar would make the statement where it says Jesus freed the captives from prison, went and preached freedom to the captives held previously. That his idea is that was broke open, and Abraham and David and so forth all get released into the heavenly realm spiritually, not physically, and these others are all cast away. So the parable of Lazarus is actually right along this line, is what Dr. Uliar would say.
You agree with that?
Yeah, he was pretty persuasive. Yes, he was pretty persuasive. The reason I'm saying this is what Dr. Uliar taught is that I don't want to present this like my own ideas, okay? So I'm trying to be careful here. I'm getting it from him. I already had thought through some of this, but he did such a good job articulating it that my inclination is to make sure I give proper credit, that you don't think I thought of this. But you guys already know this. If I say anything ever that you go, wow, that was kind of profound, just think to yourself, I wonder where he read that. Okay, so I'm just like, you know what I'm saying? This is your default setting. If something profound happens from the pulpit at Matthew Road, you go, oh, I wonder where he read that. And you can email me later. I may not remember, because sometimes it's stuff I read 20 years ago and it's just become part of my thinking. But I got it from someone else, so I may not know where I got it from. I may not remember it. Sometimes I've read it more recently, and I might be able to tell you, oh, I found it in this place, this book, this author, something like that, okay? So if anything profound is said, I don't always footnote stuff. I just preach, but I'm letting you know, if I say anything profound, it wasn't me, all right? So we're clear on this, okay? Yes, I was inspired to read someone who's smarter than me, yes. Dr. Uliar, who is now no longer there, he's now a professor. He grew up in India, moved to Seattle, came to faith through the reading of a book. I don't remember which one. He was Hindu by background, comes to saving faith. He gets to studying the Bible, and he decides to get a seminary degree. Then he goes off to, he's incredibly gifted at languages. He goes off to MIT, studies linguistics at MIT. Graduates from there, goes to Southwestern, becomes a professor there, and then is now pastoring a church, I think. He's the smartest person. Scary. And you had to read in class, which that didn't sound scary, except for you had to read it in Hebrew. And he would say, he would randomly call on you, Mr. Sweet, stand and read verse 3. Well, you're just trembling now because you don't want to mispronounce any of the words because you're supposed to read it properly, right? And so right before class, you're reading through the text in Hebrew over and over. And there's like, maybe we were covering 8 verses. So there's 8 different people we're randomly going to get called on. So you're like reading through the verses in Hebrew. And here's what he'd do. If you misread it, he'd write something in his book. I don't know what he's writing. And then he would go, Mr. Sweet, that third word right there, can you give us some information on that? And you're like, that's a noun. The declension is, whatever, and you'd have to give all the details. It's scary. You have to give the root. You'd have to. So it was really scary. And like I said, he'd already rattled these things off over a couple of different classes where I was like, he knows every word in every single verse in the entire Old Testament. Like he's got it memorized. And it was the scariest thing. I just never met someone that smart. So, yeah. He was at Southwestern, but he's not anymore. I looked him up a few years back, and he's pastoring a church somewhere. I found him online, actually. I found maybe his Facebook page or Instagram page. I don't remember. And found him went out and looked, and he's pastoring a church now. So, yes. I'm going to argue it's a spiritual experience because Paul says, absent from the body, present with the Lord. So that the soul and body are separated, and God does not raise the body until the very end. I've always wondered about this. Why not just at the point of death give them a new body in heaven now? And I think the answer is God is going to take one final victory lap over the grave. And I think 1 Corinthians 15 hints to this, right? Oh, death, where's your sting? Oh, death, where's your victory? Sting of death is sin. But praise be to God who gives us victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. That the final resurrection of the dead is going to be God's final stamp of defeat of the grave. So spiritually, you're in the presence of the Lord. I think it's a real presence. I think it's a conscious presence. But we're awaiting something. And that's this final resurrection where God will unite soul with resurrected, renewed body and put them together. And I think this parallels, by the way, the physical realm too right now, where right now in this world we have a spiritual reality of Jesus and his saints, that kind of thing. But the fullness of that won't happen until the new heaven and new earth and the descending of Jerusalem physically, right? I think it's very similar to that. We live in the spiritual realm right now. If we die, we stay in that kind of spiritual realm awaiting this final physical manifestation of this. So Paul says, absent from the body, present with the Lord, but he goes, and he even says, I'll have this period where it's kind of interesting. He goes, I have this earthly tent is torn down. We have a building that will come from God. So he's talking about his body, and we'll get a permanent dwelling. Tent's temporary, we're going to get a permanent dwelling. And he goes, but between those two, he goes, I'll have this time period of what he then switches from tents to clothing. And he goes, where I'll be disrobed. In other words, I won't have the physical body. I won't have the, tactile body. And he goes, that's still better, though. To be present with the Lord is still better than having the tactile experience, but here in this broken world. I think is the logic there. Yeah. Yes, Chris. Yeah. Okay, so the book of Revelation, yeah. Yeah, the book of Revelation does present us with a couple of challenges here. Because remember during the martyrdom in the book of Revelation, that the saints go to God and go, how much longer? And it's because they're watching what's going on earth. So I don't know. I don't know whether Aunt so-and-so is paying attention to what we're doing right now in this moment. But we do have an example, at least at one point in the book of Revelation, where saints at the presence of God look down and see the persecution taking place and make an appeal to God on our behalf. So I don't know. That intrigues me. This also, I think the other question people had was similar to that, is if we're in heaven, will we remember anything about this life, and will we know each other? In other words, will our knowledge from here translate then into the next experience, where there'll be a complete brain cleanse and you start all over? But I think John knew it was the apostles at the throne worshiping. He knew they were the apostles. Their apostolic position, I think, is part of his memory or knowledge of that. I assume their apostolic life was part of that experience, that Simon Peter is still the apostle Peter. So I think somehow in the midst of this that God allows us to have some memory from this experience, but he says he will wipe away every tear from their eye. So I don't know how this is done. I don't know how the mind does God wipe clean, like the antivirus on a computer pulls the viral software off the computer and you're left with now a clean operating system or a clean PC. Is that what happens to us in heaven? That there's this purging, not just of the broken body, but of the mind, so that our memories are stripped of the stuff that caused so much tears, pain, sorrow, and what we are stored is only that which brings joy. I don't know. I'm assuming we'll know each other in heaven. But I assume we'll know each other in a way you don't have to say, by the way, now that I've gotten here, some of your sermons were really off. I'm assuming you won't have to say that to me, right? Some of you are like, oh, that's too bad. I was waiting for that. I've been thinking it already. I was just hoping for heaven where I didn't have to try to prove that I was right. I could just go, I'm in heaven now, so now I know that some of your sermons were off, right? So, I don't know how this works. I'm not sure how this works, but yeah. So I think spiritually we're there in heaven. I think that spiritual experience is a clear thinking and a clear soul. The awareness of what's still going on earth, I think, is still there because of, at least at some level, because we have the book of Revelation where they're like, wow, this persecution's going on. They cry out, like, in a sense of justice, right? There's a physical resurrection that will take place. This will be a gathering in this massive new city of Jerusalem. It'll be the tree of life is back, only now the tree of life, instead of just keeping Adam and Eve alive, it'll be for the healing of the nations. And this will be a really incredible place to be, beyond anything we can imagine now. And so there's still questions in my mind. What are these physical bodies like? Jesus went through walls, but then ate fish and broke bread and things like that, right? Made breakfast. So I'm not quite sure I understand how that works, right? And then, so I think physical bodies, but they're a little different if we're like Jesus. And John says we know we will be just like him because we'll see him just as he is. So John says we'll be like the resurrected Jesus. So I don't know what this looks like. Does that mean you can go through walls? There's something different about the world there? I don't know. Angelic beings seem to be able to not be trapped by earthly features, but at times seem to intentionally put themselves in earthly features, like Gabriel talking to Mary. He's having a conversation with her. How does he do this? So those questions are in my mind. Now, I don't know that we're going to get all these answers for this because there's no hint in the New Testament that we're supposed to spend a lot of time obsessing over how angels do this or the nature of angels. But there's something about that makes me wonder, especially with the resurrection of Jesus, what that means for us physically in heaven. I don't know. I'm intrigued by this. So Kim and I just finished this book. Poor Kim. We do this Audible stuff, and I get to listen to this book, and I tell her about it, and then she's addicted to it. But there's a guy named Chuck Black. And he wrote a series of books entitled, it's The Knights of Eritrea is the second series. The Kingdom series is the first set. Then The Knights of Eritrea. And then he had this more recent one, Kingdom. Anyway, it's a 3-book series, but it's modern. And it tells the story of this guy, and it's an intriguing look, but throughout he's trying to deal with angelic beings and their encounter with humanity and the implications later after the resurrection, things like that. And it's been fascinating to me as I'm trying to think through the way he's presented it and angelic, demonic, influence in the world and how God uses angels for believers and for our good and things like that. So it's an intriguing book. Or set up 3 books. But it's had me thinking more and more about this. Like the nature of the physical universe with redeemed, resurrected bodies and being like Jesus and what that looks like and how much we learn from angelic encounters from that as well. I just don't know. It's intriguing to me. I mean, we'll spend the first 10,000 years in heaven just going, ooh, how does this work? All right. Hey, we did this new staging thing. Like I said, I did. I asked someone to put in some new staging, and I just paid for them out of my pocket. Didn't have anything to do with church. I wanted more space up here. It was really tight up here, and I like to wander while I preach, and I was always going like this. I'm about to fall off. This doesn't look much bigger, but it's actually quite a bit bigger. It's actually 5 feet longer than the other one, and it's 6 inches deeper. And so in the past one, I would get, a lot of times I would be doing this where I was hanging off the edge of it on the sides. I was like, I need a little more space. And the other one, the carpet, it needed to be either replaced or something done. I was just like, you know what, let's just do something else. But why was I telling you that? No, I was going somewhere with this. Oh, yeah, I know why I was telling you this. Because yesterday, I wanted to get the old stage piece out of the way so I could put this in. Well, I'm dying now. I hurt my wrist somehow in the process, and I've got a pain right here now that I don't know where it came from, but I'm pretty sure it's from dragging that other piece out of the way yesterday. And so, I told Kim, I'm like, my wrist is killing me. She said, well, how'd you hurt your wrist? I was like, I drug that thing out of the way. She's like, that hurt your wrist? I was like, don't go there. But yes, that was enough to hurt my wrist. I don't know how. And so I don't know about you guys. There's things like that in our life where you go, man, I bet an upgraded body would be really pretty cool. Yeah. But now I got this pain right here. I don't know what I did. I think while I was pulling it, I strained a muscle here, and I'm hurting right in here in my wrist. She's like, did you break it? I was like, I don't know. I'm so old. I might have broken it. I wouldn't know. I mean, how would I know? I did just, like, the body just doesn't work. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, Jim's young. No, don't let him fool you. He needs to produce a birth certificate or something like that. I don't know. I would never assume that someone's not telling the truth at church, Jim, but the fact that you claim to be over 100 bothers me. I'm just, full disclosure, it bothers me a little bit. Yeah. I think you could beat me in a race. So, yeah. He would have moved that stage yesterday without any problem too, you know. He'd be like, I just moved it out of the way. I had to get it before the preacher got to it so he wouldn't hurt himself. Yeah, all right. So, but I do think all of us, even if you're younger here, you guys that are younger, because some of you guys are really young in here, even when you're younger, you feel the pains of this life. You strain a muscle, you hurt your back, you do something that you have done a million times, and you're like, how did that hurt? Right? Even when you're younger, these kinds of things happen. And so we're going to have an upgraded body. And the other thing is this broken world. I mean, yesterday, I'm at the fair. It's a mass of brokenness. The smell of alcohol's everywhere. You can't, I mean, like, all the fans around us are drinking heavily. And they're loud and belligerent. The stadium, like I said, they ran out of water and Gatorade. There's this lady, she's a little bit older than me, and she's sitting on the ground outside the stadium, and it's very clear to me she's overheating. And, I mean, she was doing okay, but I'm just saying, it was very clear. She was very hot. She was flushed and that kind of thing. I think she's wise to get out of the stadium, get in the shade. And just everywhere around us is this constant awareness of the broken world we're in, the broken people around us. And so it's hard for us to imagine this moment where these bodies get upgraded and the place we're in gets upgraded. And we never experience the kinds of disappointment, heartbreak, disillusionment, frustration with ourselves, right? Frustrated with ourselves. You get frustrated with yourself? I do. Like, why did I do that? That was dumb. What was I thinking? Why would I say something like that? Why would I think that? Why didn't I see this problem coming? You know, all those kinds of things. Every one of us have been through those kinds of frustrations. All of us have done things too that we didn't intend to be harmful or painful, but stubbed our toe in the middle of the night or whatever it is. And then just like the next day, like, oh, my leg is hurt. Just all of those kinds of frustrations. And then in addition to that, there's the constant battle with the world of sin and brokenness and sorrow, heartbreak all around us. And there's coming a day when God will make all these things right. And there's a place with a new body with Jesus. And all these broken things will go away. Looking forward to it. Yeah. There, you won't have to worry about the preaching. It will always be perfect. Yeah. Here, a little dicier. You won't need preaching. You have the mind of Christ. That's correct. You still need choir directors, but you don't need preachers. Yeah, so. All right, well, let's pray together. Lord God, you are gracious and kind. You have provided us this everlasting hope to be with you in your presence and to be in an environment free of sin and brokenness and to be in bodies that are free from the deteriorating bodies that we currently have because of the fallen world in which we live and our own choices and all the trouble that just comes due to the environment of sinfulness. And God, we're looking forward to this day when we see Jesus face to face and he will set these things right. And so we praise you, O God, for the grace you give us in Jesus. We pray these things in the name of Christ. Amen. All right. Oh, hey, so next Sunday we're doing lunch together. Next Sunday, we're going to do lunch together after 11 o'clock service. So I would love for all of you to join us next Sunday right after service in that room right there. And so bring a dish, bring some food. I'll try to bring some extra food, okay? So I will try to bring some extra food. But bring a dish, but come hang out. Bring family, friends, strangers. Just, come hang out. Yeah. After the 11 o'clock service, so probably around 12:45. I'm kidding. Right after service. Yes, when? You did? That will last a week, though. Cheesecake will eat a week from now. You're fine. Now, I don't know if it will still be in that fridge a week from now. Like I said, we're not in heaven yet. In Jerusalem, you could leave it in the fridge in the New Jerusalem and wouldn't have to worry about it. But in the old Grand Prairie, I don't know. I don't know about that.